world. Still, there's still a long way ahead of us. We still need to render this more visible. We need more resources. The awards in some of the tournaments and championships must be at the same level. We need female coaches, female executives, so a lot of room for improvement, which is why we have four amazing athletes who I'll be introducing in a short while. And we'll speak about the challenges that women in sports are facing in terms of equality, and also how we can continue to grow, because we are enjoying quite a sweet moment as part of this evolution, but obviously we need to continue along this line. So, Georgina Oliva, or Gigi, one of the very famous field hockey players in Spain. You went to Tokyo, Berlin, and Rio, as well as other European championships. So, in your experience, what are the differences in terms of male and female sports? What have you noticed regarding your male colleagues? Thank you.
En el meu cas i en el meu esport, la principal diferència...
Well, in my case, in my sport, it is not about the financial resources, even though it exists, but rather human resources. I've been being part of these top performance sports for years now, and every time we took a look at the coaches and executives and the whole structure of a male team, they were very cautious about that, and they would think everything that needs to be done, whereas with female teams, this was not the case. You're a role model for future generations. What kind of advice would you like to share with young girls who are thinking about doing this as a career? Well, I think that they should enjoy it. If that's what they feel most passionate about, they should. But one of my biggest challenges has been to adapt to change. The only thing that has been constant in my life is change of coaches, financial crisis, change in your status, or also this wave in which well, women can become referential figures, and that requires a lot of changing. Okay, so we have Jana Fernández, who's an FC Barcelona soccer player, one of the great young athletes. You have a lot of awards, and you've also played for the Spanish team and internationally. So, Jana, you are privileged because you're playing for Barca. Do you think that what the club has done for the female section is important? Of course, and a way to attest to this is that well, we have won a lot of championships, and people invest in terms of not only money and time, but rather effort. We can see these not only in my sport, but in my discipline, but in many others. I believe that there's still a lot to be done. We are fighting so that, well, all of these outstanding questions can change. We're still in a very machoist society. I'm quite young, and some of the things that I'm enjoying were achieved in the past. But we need to keep fighting so that the new women who will come in the future can enjoy a better situation. Barca is a pioneer in terms of investing not only money but time and effort, and we have seen that, well, we are trying to bring the name of the club all across the globe, and we're doing great work. Yes, you could be. This could be an example also for some other Spanish clubs where the young athletes must also have another job on the side because they cannot earn a living out of sports. Yes, it is quite sad that we still need to see these kind of situations in top performance sports. Well, yes, the club and the section is now professional, but there are still a lot of problems for many athletes to become professional athletes and enjoy decent rights. I have to say that, well, we cannot complain being part of the Barca club. We are enjoying optimal conditions, but still a lot needs to be done. And we need to be an example for many clubs in Spain and across the globe so that they can invest in their female sections as well, and then to give opportunities to young athletes. Okay, well, now Britt Vonk, who's a softball player from the Netherlands. Are you following the translation?
player of the national team in Holland. She has been playing many important competitions, international competitions, also the Peking, the players of Beijing. And you've been playing also in the University of California in Berkeley. You've been the younger player with your team when you play the Olympic Games in Peking. What do you think about softball? Softball is like baseball, but player with majority for women. Do you think there is also you have to reivindicate the equality in your sport?
Yes, certainly. First, I would like to say that I'm very honored to be here and that I got invited, that I'm honored to sit beside these amazing women and that this event is happening. It's really great. But yes, I mean, there is quite some inequality between softball and baseball. I mean, I think it could be compared to a lot of other different sports where the inequality is existent with the different genders. I think, yeah, I can name a lot of the issues, but some of them are, of course, salary and exposure and publicity. But I think the first step for that to change is paying more attention to the visibility of the women in sports and just put a lot of attention to that. And these events like this are very important so women like us can share our stories and share our experiences, and hopefully these stories will spread and change will slowly follow.
You've been playing in USA also and in Holland. Is it very different, the softball there, than here in Spain?
Yes, yes, sadly, but yeah, in the US, the game of softball is very, very big, maybe compared to football here. So for us Europeans, it's tough to get to the professional league in the US. But also here in Europe, it's slowly changing the sport of softball. And yeah, I'm feeling also responsible to make that change happen, to really put more effort into the exposure. But yeah, the difference is quite large, yeah.
Thank you very much. I tenim també la...
Okay, and we also have Astrid Fina with us, who's a bronze medalist for snowboard at the Paralympic Games. The first Spanish woman to ever win a medal in this Paralympic discipline. So from your perspective, what's lacking for women's sports to keep growing at the level of male sports? Well, I believe that we need more exposure. Because this will help people follow us and support us and probably enjoy more resources. In a way, it's like a virtuous circle, just like it happens with adapted sports. The more we are seen, the more support we will garnish from all over the world. Obviously, if we don't see it, we don't know it exists. In your case, Astrid, well, you have quite an interesting story. You had a motorbike accident. You had a foot amputated, and snowboard pretty much saved your life, you said. Can you tell us about that? Yes, I had an accident in 2009. I was actually leaving the Camp Nou, and I was on my motorbike going home. A car skipped the light, and, well, it crashed against me, and for 3 years I tried to salvage my foot, but I couldn't. And at the end of that process, I myself decided to have it severed, and that's what happened. And when I started doing snowboard, people would, laugh at me, and I thought, well, it's not a wooden leg, but it will be difficult for me anyway. And after a month, I was playing for the national team. So everything was quite fast. And then the year after that, I went to my first games ever. I was so tired, though. I was training and training all day long.
Vam fer un diploma Va ser brutal, és bueno, el més que et pot passar com a esportista, no? Sí. I el que noto, bueno, en el món adaptat, noto que no hi ha tanta diferència de noia a noia, perquè a l'hora de beques són les mateixes durant el mateix temps i això, però sí que noto...
However, there's something I do notice, which is a big difference in terms of Olympic Games and Paralympic Games. So a sports grant lasts half the same time. They get paid three times what a Paralympic athlete is paid, and I believe that these are the things that should be harmonized to have both the Olympic and the Paralympic Committee, and to achieve that equality not only between men and women, but rather Olympic and Paralympic sports. So you were saying that there should be a committee specializing in Paralympic. Well, there are two of them already. So what I'm saying is that they should be brought together and unite their efforts. Because as I was saying, Paralympic sports are not very visible. Well, because it's not broadcast on TV and people don't get to know them. If you become aware of these kind of sports and all of the personal stories behind us, it would improve. But this is just like it happened with women in sports. I mean, things are slowly but surely moving on and improving. Yes, visibility as a main goal. We'll go for a second round of questions because I believe that you all have very interesting stories. In your case, Georgina, field hockey is a very family-related sports because both your father and your brother have been players in this discipline. So it's something that is passed down to generations. Yes, in my case, it has been. It's a very small sport, mind you. In people actually ask you if you are a nice hockey player or in the field or on well, you have to tell them that you are carrying a stick, and pretty much they find out about you once every 4 years when the Olympic Games are on. And I come from the Valles Occidental county, and there's quite a tradition there. My father went to the Olympic Games, and my brother too. So I would go with them to the club, and the coaches had played for Barcelona, or they had been trained in Atlanta, or I mean, they were all top athletes, and they had gone to Sydney or Athens. And in my school, I had an opportunity to compete in 2 Olympic Games with some of my classmates. So being part of a national team and going to participate in such a championship was something normal. No one actually was aware that it was an extraordinary feat. And then when you started training, you realize how privileged you are. Especially in Terrassa, right, where you have the Amat and Bonastre and so many families that are important in field hockey. Have you talked to your father about the differences, gender differences in this sport? When I was a child, I remember that we would joke about these kind of things, and probably now I wouldn't let him say these kind of things. He said, well, in female hockey is not female or hockey. And I was so angry when he would say this. It's neither one thing nor the other. But if he were brave enough to say these things right now, obviously I would talk him down because these are not things that are allowed anymore. I'm not sure if it would end with a slap on his face, but I don't know. So this has happened. You know, my brother went to the games, he won medals and several leagues, and I haven't seen that many differences when you're part of a national team because we are paid by the ADO, which is based on the kind of championships you've won. Depending on the number of medals that you have achieved, you get paid more. And these kind of differences back then was quite normal. The boys had more medals, therefore they had more money and were paid more. Whereas this was not the case for girls. And it's one of the problems that these kind of sports have, and that's what we need to keep fighting for. But in Paralympic sports, even more. Obviously, some of them are more famous, but One of the problems that we're encountering is that for people to really get to know us and to become more visible, you need to keep winning all the time. That's how you become inspiring for people. And that's something we need to work on, and for people to help us make this more visible. If it's a minority sport, female sport, Paralympic sport, as long as there's an effort behind it, well, we need to find a place to get more exposure. Yes, obviously, we need to work from the grassroots on and to have important role models like yourself. Jana Fernández, who works for Barça. Barça is probably going through the female section, that is, through its best moment in history. It has filled up the Camp Nou twice, which was no easy feat. How do you explain this kind of passion? Well, you said it's a virtuous cycle. Well, I agree. I think that soccer is a very popular sport. People love it in Spain. There are a lot of supporters. In the past, you could see a male of soccer being played, whereas with female soccer, people didn't even know it existed. Or when I started playing, I didn't know any famous female athletes, so I could not see myself in any important female athlete, even though they existed. I just wasn't aware of them. And I believe that it all has to do with this kind of exposure and investing both money and efforts. And I believe that we are fortunate enough because the kind of environment that one can feel in the field, such as in Camp Nou, it's quite healthy. I'm not sure if that's the case in other sports. We need to remain very close to our supporters and to be humble. That's something that we need to continue showing in the future in any kind of sports. And that's probably what is inviting for people, and it helps them, it encourages them to come to the Camp Nou and enjoy a wonderful time. People of any age, and well, I believe that they see in us possible future role models, and that's what makes you feel the proudest. I'm 20, and there might be very young girls wearing a T-shirt with my name when they come to the Johan Field or the Camp Nou, and that is well, quite shocking. It's a change that we have experienced in the past 5 years, and it's a very wonderful experience, even though, as I said, there's still a long way to go in our sports and in any of the other sports. I probably do not enjoy this kind of exposure. Sure, we're speaking about soccer, which is king, but in your case, you had Alexia Putellas, Vera Boquete, and now you have Aitana Bonmati, even though she's younger. You were saying that there are young girls with your T-shirt, but also young boys. You're also a role model for boys. Yes, and that is probably the biggest change. It doesn't matter anymore. I'm a Barca supporter. I have been all my life. I had always come to the Camp Nou to watch the game, and probably on my T-shirt, well, you could read Messi or whoever player I was following at the time. And I was a girl, obviously. So to have a change among young children, having boys following us as well, understanding that we're very close, that we're human beings, we're not just stars. That is something that is quite important as well. But especially girls, I think it's more important for them to realize that they can also do that as a job. It's a wonderful sport, and obviously that's what I feel. But at least they should see this. It's a possibility for them. They need to study. We are also studying, many of us. Um, I don't think, it's not like being a male athlete still. You cannot earn a living solely from football, but it's very important to have time and to be able to focus on what you're doing. That's what I wanted to ask Britt Vonk as well.
In USA, the country what is the most important country in softball, but you also have to study sociology, because it is very difficult for a sport woman only play as a professional. You have to study also for the future.
Yes, exactly. And I was luckily and fortunate enough that they offered me a scholarship when I was 18. I was able to go to California and study there. And I'm not sure how the system here is in Spain, but where I'm from in Holland, they don't really have the same sort of programs where you can study and do a full-time sports as well. So in the US, there's a lot of opportunities there because you go to college, you play your sport, and you get your bachelor's degree. So, and I went to, I was lucky to go to Berkeley, which is one of the best public schools in the USA. So, I knew from a pretty young age that that was important because, you can be an athlete, but at some point that's gonna obviously stop, sadly. But after maybe 8 years of playing professionally, I came back to Holland and I finished a master's in sociology with a focus on gender and sexuality and culture, mainly because I was very interested in how the inequalities were happening in sports, not only gender, but also sexual orientation, race. So I was just curious, like, why is this happening? So I wanted to educate myself more on the subject. So I did a master's and I finished. And hopefully, when I'm finished with professional softball, I can do that together somehow.
Because why did you choose sociology? Why did you choose?
Why I chose sociology? Well, one of the reasons because I'm an athlete and I really saw firsthand that there were some inequalities, and I was just really interested on how certain groups have certain effects on other people in society, and I just noticed that needs more attention. So I wanted to educate myself and see how I can use that knowledge in sports. And right now I'm an ambassador for my federation back home for inclusivity and diversity. So to make sort of the sport more welcomed to everyone, no matter what your background is.
Thank you very much. Astrid, Fina, ara ja no estàs competint, ara et dediques...
Astrid, you're not competing anymore, right? You're training, or you're one of the pioneers in training in the Paralympic world. Are you a trailblazer? Well, yes, I obtained a degree as a snowboard coach because I believe that my experience can be helpful to other boys and girls to try their foot in this field. And I believe that in adapted sports, many people ski, but sometimes they don't know that they can also play snowboard as an adapted sport. And I believe that not everyone has to come to the dark side and also play snowboard, but at least they should know that it exists. It's probably one of these pending issues, right? To have more female coaches. Indeed, there should be more, but especially in adapted sports. You don't have a lot of people specializing in this field. Whenever I went to the World Cup or championships, maybe I met, a couple of female coaches. I mean, there are very few. And I think that we can all change this. Yes, indeed. Those of you who have been Olympic athletes and have won medals, you can also contribute with your experience to younger generations. Okay, let's finish. Georgina, I would like to know, well, hockey is a traditional sport in Catalonia and Spain. You have been one of the greatest athletes in this field. What do you think should be done for future generations to have it easier so that they don't need to go through what you experienced as a child? So what's lacking? Do we need more resources, more exposure, as we said? What should be done?
In the case of hockey, one thing we could do is awareness, raise awareness in schools. talking about women today, so let's especially focus on girls. Ensure that girls know about this sport and can sign up for it. As to other needs, well, now we've set up a new way of working. We've been doing that for about 10 years. And a good job has been done on that front. And so in terms of, well, we're getting some economic resources from the government. We need that. And then, the clubs need to ensure that we have good coaches and a good structure. And also the structure needs to have more women leaders, more women coaches, more women refs, and so on and so forth, because it all seems to be closed to women. Well, there are more and more women coaches, former players who have become coaches. There's more and more room for that. Now we have a woman coach who is the coach of a male team, of a men's team. I mean, that had already happened in other countries, but it's still something that people find quite striking. But I mean, it's happening more and more. Thank you very much. Okay, Jana, I had this kind of question for you too. You are trailblazers. Some people are saying that women's football is just a fashion, it's just a fad, rather. Would you agree? Well, no, I don't think so. People have just become fans of women's football. I mean, if you work with the supporters, that helps. As the Secretary General said earlier, it's all based on the opportunities given to children. When I was younger, if I had wanted to play in a women's team, there was no women's team in my town. But now there are women's teams in my town and the towns around it, so things have changed. I'm 20 years old now. This was when I was 12. So things have changed. So the idea is to ensure that girls actually have the opportunity to take part in sports, especially sports that are high visibility sports. And I sure hope women's football won't be a fad and that it'll remain high profile for a long time. Now a career in football is seen as a possibility for women. That was not the case in the past. When I was younger, when I told my mother I wanted to sign up for football, she found it a bit shocking because, or unusual anyway, because football was perceived as a boys' sport, as a male sport. So, the fact that it's less surprising that women want to play football is a good thing, and that's the greatest thing. Yeah, because, I mean, it used to be said that football is a man's sport, and but now women's football is really out there, and we have a women's football league that's doing very well. Now we want to have the same kind of thing in basketball, water polo, you name it. So, your example should be followed by others. Yes, I've always said, I think we're very lucky. In Spain, football is a renowned sport. We're achieving a lot of things these days, and other sports are not obtaining the kind of recognition that they've earned. I mean, we're out here, but we represent many other people behind us. Everybody is working in their section, but ultimately we're all here for the same thing. We have to set an example. We have to ensure greater visibility, not just for ourselves, but for everybody else. I remember the
de que creixin juntament amb nosaltres.
Aprofitar que el futbol és l'esport rei, no? Doncs per obrir camí a altres esports que també estan guanyant moltes medalles, estan tenint representants molt importants i en canvi encara no són professionals, donar aquest pas a la professionalització, que puguin tenir totes doncs, un salari, unes condicions, uns recursos.
Wages, conditions, resources as required now. We apologize for the interruption, but the interpreters lost the sound feed. So, Britt, Vonk.
Do you think there is many difference in the difference between woman and man here in Spain in comparison with Holland or with United States?
That's difficult for me to say because I'm currently not. I don't know much about both the baseball and the softball in Spain. I think there is same apparent here as it is back home, where probably when you compare the juniors with the seniors, juniors are similar with the amount of people that play the sports, and maybe the attention is the same. But once you get higher, there's just more exposure and visibility for the men in the baseball. That's also still the case in Holland. Not sure how it is here in Spain, but in the US it's huge difference. I played there professionally for 3 years in Chicago. It has grown a lot. Like, we get more exposure, we get higher salaries, but I mean, compared probably with football, it's nothing compared to the men. The men, they make millions, and the women, not even a tiny percentage of that. So it's good. I'm very optimistic, and I'm positive that there's slow growth in softball, but yeah, sadly, there's still a huge gap.
You are also popular in Holland. What did you say to the future generations?
Well, what I want to say to the next future generation, well, she's the next generation. We were talking a little bit before we went on here, because I'm now like one of the oldest on the team, and I've seen what has happened in the last 20 years. So when I first started, it was very different than now. So I can see that it's gonna go in a much better direction. And what I want to say is that while I'm still playing sports, I'm going to really fight as a woman and fight for the next generation, so they will have even more that we have now, and hopefully be equal with men.
Thank you very much. Astrid, Fina, ja que et tenim aquí, un exemple de superació.
Astrid, Fina, here we have you. You are an amazing example in terms of overcoming difficulty. What can you say as an athlete? What values has elite sports given you? Well, I couldn't say. Adapted sports, first of all, enabled me to get over the fact that I had an amputated foot. I was hiding that sort of thing at the outset. In the first World Cup in Slovenia, I saw people just removing their prosthetic limbs and just doing it quite naturally, and it was quite an impact. It was just a reminder that I was missing out on a lot. So as a result of this, well, my personal habits and lifestyle have changed. I've learned, I've met a lot of people, and I've made a lot of friends. The values. Yes, it's definitely been a life lesson, as you say. Yeah, well, that's amazing. Let's see, if we have the time, let's have another round. The issue of values in sports has come up. I think it's an interesting one. I mean, it's as if women's sports were healthier than men's sports, perhaps less excessively competitive or something. Would you say that women's sports, sort of in pure terms, have more to contribute in terms of values, both to women and men? Yes, what I mean is that there is less less contamination, there's less noise from TV arguments and so on and so forth. I mean, is women's sport more about pure passion for sports? Well, I mean, what you're talking about only happens for football here. Really, it's not our case. I mean, in our case, there isn't that much difference between women and men. It would be sexist, as a matter of fact, to make the claim the way you were making it. I really can say that that is not the case in hockey. So what values has hockey brought to your life? Well, that question would take a long time to answer, but the fact is that hockey's my life, and it's given me an important thing, which is, being ready for any kind of change. And also, working hard, self-esteem. And then when you get recognition in one area, you know that it can work in other areas. And what you learn in sports can also be brought to other parts of life. Jana said that they can make a living in their sports. We can't do that, but we have other areas in our life, and we can do that. So you're still an elite athlete. Do you expect to continue working or doing things in hockey? Well, right now I'm kind of half and half. I'm in the club, in the national team. Well, we'll see. In my life, I've had some personal crises. I actually studied aeronautical engineering, and all of my classmates had completed their studies, and they were achieving great results professionally, and I didn't have that opportunity the way they had. I tried to get the opportunity to combine my hockey and professional work, and then at first it was a problem. Now, I'm not her age. I'm 32 years old by now. I'm starting to consider whether my body can handle this sort of thing, but I am starting to, pave the way for a different lifestyle. Well, wow, aeronautical engineering, that is also amazing, studying for a degree while you're competing as well. What has sports contributed to you, Jana? Well, I think sports change you as a person. I could say a lot. As she said, this could take a long time to answer. It's taught me a lot. And in a club such as Barcelona Football Club, which is more than a club, which is followed by many people, where you become an example to people wherever you go, well, that makes a difference too. Barcelona has always said that it's more than a club, and that they've always taught us values. From the earliest age, they teach us the values of athletics, and we hope that this will help feed into visibility.
National team in Holland. What do you think about the as a person, sport? What give to you the sport, the values of the sport?
The value of softball or the value of sport? What do you?
The values of the sport.
Of the sport. Wow. You have it's a long list of things that sports has taught me over the years. I think it has grown me from a girl into a woman, and has given me a lot of different skills to become a great athlete. We can all name all the things that you need, a lot of dedication, hard work, learning how to deal with failure. All those skills I've learned over the years, and it has shaped me into, I guess, the woman that I am now. And I can use a lot of skills in real life as well. So yeah, I can't even describe what kind of impact it has on me. But it's been very good so far. good impact, yeah.
Okay, thank you very much. Astrid, has començat també parlant del tema dels...
Thank you, Astrid. You also started out talking about the values contributed by sports, particularly in your case. And, what values have you learned from this experience? Well, I also learned a lot of values like they did. Above all, that if you want something, you have to fight for it. They won't just give it to you. If you have an aim in life, you have to fight for it. If you don't do anything, you won't get it for sure. So, go for it. The thing about you elite women athletes is that you're an inspiration both to girls and boys. Well, yeah, I mean, it's about, fighting about the sacrifice. I had to spend Christmases alone, being away from my friends, working very hard because I had to follow the snow. But anyway, I'm a very stubborn sort of person, and I didn't mind being on my own and being away. I mean, there are sacrifices involved, but there's also some payoff. Yeah, that hasn't been mentioned, the things that you give up. You, Astrid, also had to experience that. What you give up by being away from home. Yes, and I had experienced significant trauma. But it's also a fact that the coach and the team supported me a lot. They gave me a lot of support. And there were 3 of us who had to overcome a lot of things. I think everybody should experience a Paralympic village. You see so many things around you that you just stop feeling any kind of silly emotions. I remember at lunch there was this guy whose head was right on top of my food tray, and he was smelling the food tray because he was blind. I mean, there are all sorts of things. And sports get rid of limitations. Santa Cana, a blind skier hurtling down a track at 1,000 kilometers per hour. I mean, hundreds of kilometers per hour. I mean, that's just amazing. Yeah, and sometimes followers, supporters only see your successes, only see when you're competing out there at the top level without realizing that there's a lot of background work involved. Anyway, thank you very much, all 4 of you. Are there any questions from the floor? Are there any questions? No one? Okay, well, that's it. Let's keep going. Thank you very much, girls.
¿Esto? ¿Eso también?